I'm Lisa Snyderman, and this is Conversations on Creating to Heal. And today I'm really thrilled to be speaking with Emily Ann Peterson in Nashville, Tennessee. And Emily is a singer-songwriter, a creative consultant, and also author of Bare Naked Bravery, How to Be Creatively Courageous. And her story is one of persevering through a life-changing degenerative condition, discovering her bravery and helping others do the same. So welcome, Emily Ann.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So that's a lot of hats I kind of described. Can you maybe talk a little bit about who you are and just if you have a short mission or purpose for all of these hats or for one of these hats?
I think that a lot of us, in fact, probably everyone has many hats that they should be wearing. And I think the rest of the world tells us that we should be wearing one. It's hard. It's hard for when you're in like a stage presence kind of persona to be wearing multiple hats. It's hard for an audience to kind of take that in, but it doesn't change the fact that we are multi-potentialites. I don't know if you are familiar with the term multi-potentialite. It's a good one to adopt. Good one to adopt. You are definitely one of them. You asked about like mission. I kind of stumbled into the word bravery through my diagnosis. And maybe this will change in the future, but right now the word is bravery and courage and doing all of that creatively, and basically redefining those words for a world that needs a lot more of it.
It's a beautiful mission. It's so needed. And I'm really curious about your story. So let's launch into that. What were some of the events that transpired, and how did that most significantly transform you?
Yeah, so I was about 5 or 6 years ago now, was diagnosed with a degenerative neurological disease called an essential tremor. So one essential tremor in my right hand. At the time, I was a full-time cellist and recording artist and cello teacher. And that was all I really wanted to do. That I knew was, that was my thing. I knew it was called to do what I was doing, and got this diagnosis that was really career halting. It really was awful. It really sucked. It was a little awkward because on the surface, it's not that big a deal to have your right hand shake occasionally. But at the time, I didn't know this to be true, but my entire livelihood and all of my community and the place that I lived and this specific apartment that I lived in, all of that centered around this piece of wood that I played music on. And it all was resting on the stability of my right hand, which was not a very for sure thing any longer. Part of the problem was that it really wasn't a big tremor, but we didn't know how bad it was going to get, and we didn't know how fast it was going to get bad. Mm-hmm. So it just became this very large question mark that didn't make it a smart choice to continue investing my entire livelihood, community, everything into the stability, the waning stability of my right hand. So
how was it from, you're at this place where you didn't expect this big life event, and how was it that you ended up turning to writing, and was writing something you'd already been doing?
Yeah, I was always writing. I was always journaling and doing all sorts of stuff. And I had done songwriting previously with other groups that I was part of, other bands that I was in, and that kind of thing. But that whole process, I was going through a massive identity deconstruction, dissection, basically, just taking all the pieces out and going like, wait, what's left here? I had a 6-week artist residency soon after the diagnosis, out in the mountains of Leavenworth, Washington, and was able to take some of that time to do a lot of this heavy emotional work. And through that time was kind of doing some creative sulking as well, and did my first batch of solo songs that I wrote by myself. And I knew enough of that. I knew enough of that whole experience, and I knew enough about being an artist that I was not a cellist. I was a musician. I wasn't just a musician. I was a songwriter. I wasn't just a songwriter. I was an artist, and I had something to say. And if I was going to say it, I was going to have to be brave. And I didn't know exactly what I needed to say, but I just knew that if I was going to go forward with this new version of myself, that I was going to have to be brave. And I didn't know what bravery actually meant. Like we talk about it a lot in our society and our culture right now. We idolize a lot of people who we think are brave, and we don't actually know what bravery is. And we don't actually, we are not able to actually spit out what the ingredients are, or know that we can build it in certain areas of our life, and in certain ways. So that's what I was looking for. And I didn't really have any answers that were given to me. There's a lot of books about fear out there. There's a lot of books even about courageous things and moments in life, but there wasn't a book that I could find that was, these are the ingredients involved. And the way my mind works is I just wanted the ingredients, and I can put together the pieces then, so I knew that my story wasn't super unique. I mean, it's, not every day that a cellist gets this diagnosis, but the career halting diagnoses and the life halting diagnosis, and those moments that kind of crumble around your ankles, that happens a lot to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I can resonate, in my own experience, right?
Yeah.
It's a similar thing when I just say, like, when the rug is pulled from under you, what do you
Yeah,
do, right?
totally.
And you're left to, like you say, reshape that identity. So talk a little bit about what that was like for you. What was that healing process? Healing happens in different ways. I understand
Right.
that. Can be spiritual, can be physical. What was it for you, and how has creating and then also sharing your book continued to help you?
So after I had that moment of, I don't know what bravery is, and there's a book missing in the world,
Yeah.
I spent around 3.5, 3-ish years. I'm not very good at keeping track of time, but about around 3 years of research. And that research sometimes looked like podcasts that I released where I was interviewing people in like a more formal public setting. But it also was just a lot of behind the scenes pulling pieces apart, kind of like, how when you're making yarn, you
Mm-hmm.
have those two paddles, and you are taking the sheep wool and you're pulling it apart like this. You're making it fluffy, but you're also taking out all the impurities and things like that. I felt like it was 3 years of doing that. And it was painful, and it hurt, and it wasn't easy, and there was a lot of crying,
Yeah.
and I was not a lot of my best moments in life. But collectively, they really did, like, I wouldn't take it back for anything. Like, I wouldn't have done anything differently. You always just need to grieve how you need to grieve. And the best way to make the grieving process not last so long is to just let it happen, even if it's kind of unwieldy
Yeah.
and, messy.
Uncomfortable at times. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
working through all of the things that you're feeling. Yeah.
Exactly. I talk a lot with people who are going through some similar situations, and I can tell the ones that are like fighting the discomfort are the ones that will be fighting the discomfort for years and years and years, perhaps decades.
Yeah.
And and when you finally are able to open up your grief and go, this sucks, this is so really bad, I don't love this process, it's probably going to be like this for a while, but I'm just going to let this thing breathe and do what it needs to do, to heal. And it really does go by a lot quicker than you think it does or will.
At
and
least
people,
it's out there, right? And
yeah.
instead of it being inside. So talk a
Hmm.
little bit about the impact from your book.
So since releasing it, I've had, I get a lot of random people from the internet who tell me that they have gotten a lot out of it, but I've also um, really gotten a lot out of hearing feedback from my immediate community of fans and followers. And I'll be at a concert or something that I'm doing, and someone, will reference a story that's a really intimate story, by the way. Like my book is filled with
Yeah.
a lot of raw stories that I debated whether to share or not in a public forum. And they'll like reference the fact that they know some detail about my life, and I'll have that instinctive moment of like, oh, how do you know that?
Oh,
And I'll go,
yeah.
oh yeah, I put it in a book in
You
public.
allowed
Oh,
yourself
right.
to be vulnerable and brave, remember? Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
I did that for a reason. Like I thought that my podcast was going to give me a lot of fodder for my book manuscript, and it did. It helped me formulate a lot of theories. But I got to the end of all those theories and realized, wow, if I write a book about bravery and then point to everyone else's bravery in the book, but am not able to find it in myself and display that in a vulnerable, brave way, then I am a hypocrite. And I do not want to be a hypocrite. So I actually made the hard choice to only use stories from my life to display these moments of bravery and imagination and improvisation, and moments where they failed and moments where they
Yeah.
succeeded.
Yeah.
So I think that that's been a really great thing to hear from people, that making that choice meant a lot to them. And I
Yeah.
know enough about myself to know that I would not have been able to make the same points in as powerful of a way if I had used someone else's stories to make those same points.
Yeah, and it sounds like the healing happens both in the creating and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to share. And then again, once you've shared and get the feedback from other people, that's
Yeah.
healing too. So
Yeah.
I want to invite you now to share a meaningful
Sure.
passage from this book and talk a little bit about it.
Sure. So this is the cover of the book. It's got all my author tabs for when I do live readings. So I'm going to read from basically the beginning of part 1, which is titled The Cycle of Creativity and Courage as Told Through an Eviction and Diagnosis. Earlier that year, I began to notice a small trembling in my right hand, the hand that holds my cello bow. Thinking it was just from too much coffee or maybe my imagination, I ignored it. I kept ignoring it until I began to notice other people trying to ignore it. We'd be having perfectly engaging and normal lunch conversation, and I'd watch my friend's eyes steal a glance at my trembling hand. It was most severe when I tried to hold chopsticks, a fork, a spoon, or talk with my hands, which I do a lot. The trembling made me look like I was nervous, even though I wasn't. I'm not doing it on purpose, I would say. My hands just shake sometimes, as if I tried to hide a full-grown pink elephant with a baby's blanket. The shaking wasn't in my imagination. It went harmlessly like this for months until, while warming up in preparation to teach a cello lesson, I heard it, the tremble. The hand tremor became audible, and ever so slightly my cello shook, sounding like a terrified whisper from inside the strings. I called my general practitioner immediately. She saw me the next week and practically held my hand as we walked upstairs to the neurologist's office. She was concerned more than I was. It was nothing. Surely it was nothing. It was simply too much stress. The recent self-eviction and living in a guest bedroom were just making me feel uneasy about life. And despite my attempts at explaining it away, there was still a small voice inside me suggesting, perhaps this is why you're so exhausted at the end of a teaching day lately. Maybe you've been subconsciously trying to wrestle your bow to stay steady for more than 8 hours every day. The neurologist confirmed that yes, I have a degenerative hereditary neurological disease called an essential tremor. I left with a prescription and a whole internet at my trembling fingertips. A couple weeks later, at my third neurological appointment, the doctor was consoling me after our second failed medication attempt. Minimizing my hand tremor was proving harder than he had thought, and I thought he was making a bigger deal than necessary until he said, Emily Ann, we need you to keep playing music. I need you to keep playing your music. You are the kind of neurology patient who gives me a reason to come to work. The world needs more music. We will find something for you. Let's try this other medication. I don't remember what he said next because that was the moment that it hit me. I had already done my online research. Essential tremors are degenerative. The shaking in my right hand was going to get worse, not better. I knew there was, and still is, nothing but symptom fixers out there as a treatment. There is no cure. The shaking might even spread to other body parts. The reality of my impending loss finally broke through denial like a ton of bricks tied to my cello falling from a cliff. They hit the ground hard, and shards of hand-carved, hand-varnished spruce and pine lay on the god-awful hospital carpet under my feet. Here I was helplessly sitting on this butcher paper in some windowless hospital room. I could do nothing about it. I felt as splintered as my career would inevitably become. Looking up from my feet to his face, I interrupted my neurologist. So this isn't just going to go away, is it? He sighed, looked up from his prescription pad to meet my eyes, finally saying, no, I'm so sorry. It's not going away. I was now staring my humble but beloved cello career in its dying eyes. So yeah, rainbows die, unicorns fart, Santa Claus isn't real, shit will hit the fan, fear is a fact of life, and I was drowning in constraint. Who would I become without my cello next to me? Would that even be enough? What would I do now? I had already reluctantly evicted myself because a student bailed on her tuition. I was living out of my car and sleeping at a friend's house. And not only that, but for months I had scraped together and raised enough money for a 6-week artist residency, which was to start in 2 weeks.
Yeah. That's a pretty amazing beginning. And it also really ties you to your identity. You know, that's who you were. Right? And who are you going to be if that's who you couldn't be anymore? So I want to ask if you have some life lessons, and maybe they're lessons of bravery, but something for somebody going through something similar, not necessarily degenerative condition, but trying to seek out their own bravery. What would you tell them?
Well, I just discovered this the other day, just from doing more research for other things that I do. There's a Japanese study out there that has proof that 6 deep breaths has a physical difference on your blood pressure. So if you are stressing about a current season of bravery that you're going through, it is a scientific fact that 6 deep breaths will actually help you physically handle the situation. So that's my quick tip, is just take 6 deep breaths.
Love it. And that's in a row?
Yep. Just
that's great. Yeah.
And
well,
that
on that
times.
note, 6 deep breaths. Thank you so much for coming on to Conversations on Creating to Heal.
Oh, thank you for having me.